Does anyone speak German? Little bit. Das Gleiche, dasselbe. The same, the similar. Doesn't make sense. It's like, and we struggle with that when we grow up. When someone says, oh, I have the same cup in my room, our parents tell us, is it the same exactly? Or does it just look the same? The two different words. It looks the same, it is the same. Okay?
There are also two words.
In Hebrew?
Yeah.
Oh, great. What are those two words?
Dome is similar.
Ah, okay. Dome is similar, and the other one? Zehe.
Similar and identical.
Dome is Zehe. Okay.
It's the same one.
All right, there you have the same. You probably had to learn it when you were little, right? Dome is Zehe. Do you mix them up? Do you mix them up? In German, you do somehow. So we mix them up, and so our parents would say, when you use them, sometimes you mix them up. Okay? The first syllable, das, the, kind of basically saying the, and then say, the similar. Okay? Say similar. And people always mix them up. And here I think what's important is their humanity, their being human, is not the same. It's merely similar. In the sense that we define a human being or a person, the definition that's usually given in philosophy is that which is labeled on the basis of any of the 5 aggregates. Like being a person, alright? So labeled on any of the 5 aggregates. Now, that is true. We label, and that's a person, because we say person, independent on any of its 5 aggregates. The same we do here. But the aggregates are different. So based on the aggregates, just because there are similarities, therefore I call him human and him human. Just to make sense, to categorize things. To say those things are similar, those things are similar, okay. And that's a good thing. Words are helpful because they're symbolisms that help us to make sense of things. But they're never precise. In fact, that's their nature. They're very imprecise. They're not precise. They never get at all the details. They just give us a rough idea, human, okay? But our problem is that they suggest more than just being labeled on account of similarity. Just because I call him human and him human, to my mind, now it makes him truly a human and him truly a human, and since I use the same label, it seems there's something intrinsic in him that is also intrinsic in him. That's our problem. So don't blame the labeling. We don't say, oh, let's stop labeling because we get into trouble. No, labeling is good. Those symbols, they help us to categorize things and recognize similarity and therefore make sense of the world around us. But it's because our mind adds always some existence to things that they don't have. That's where we go into the extreme of coming up with ideas of universalities, universal humanness. And even if it's not a whole philosophy, it leads to racism, gender bias, religious bias, the religious intolerance, what else? Religion is a cultural bias, religious bias, gender bias, ethical, tweets all, right? Those are all expressions of our
Us and them.
Huh?
Us and them.
Us and them, exactly. Again, us and them. Them, because they're not having being Israeli, for instance, or being a woman, or being a man. Therefore it becomes them. So we focus on so in the first place, we focus on the similarities. In this case, where we distinguish between others, we focus on the differences. Right? So it's much more than just having that religion, for instance. We have in common that we're humans. We have in common something that is so deep and so important. So deep and so important. You know, the way we think we feel close to people is because of things we have in common. Maybe same music, same haircut, same taste in clothing, religion, culture, nationality, etc. But and that's just very superficial. There's one thing we have in common with everyone. What is that?
We want
live free. What is it? Not for the nature.
No.
I mean, that too. We all want to be happy, we don't want to suffer. We all want the same thing. We want to be happy, we don't want to suffer. So this Dalai Lama always stresses that. Always stresses. We're all the same. We want to be happy, we don't want to suffer. We find that happiness in different ways, but it's the same drive. And we all deserve to be happy. So my happiness is just as important as everyone else's. It comes down to that because we make others suffer in order to find more happiness. Right? We feel like, oh, they're over there and over here. Forgetting that we're just the same. This one quality is so important. We all share that. So no matter where you're from, no matter what you look like, your religion, your views, etc., I can tell about this other person. There is no, I know they just want to be happy, just like me. They're really looking for the same things in life. It's the same drive that makes them happy. Isn't that beautiful? Right? It connects all of us. But we distance ourselves from them. We distance ourselves from them by saying them, by focusing on them, again, taking a label, and the whole person is just separate from me because that's all I'm seeing. I'm exaggerating. Does that make sense? So this is like a crash course on Brahmanavatika philosophy, like labels, etc. But it all makes sense in the context of emptiness, and of course it's not that hard to understand. Nina, you raised your hand. Can it wait?
Yes, I wanted to say that I think at the beginning of time, and when there were no words, people wanted to categorize in order to understand it. I mean, it was a survival mode. And you immediately, as soon as you saw somebody, you needed to understand very quickly.
Yeah.
Is this a friend or a foe? Do I have solidarity with this person, or do I need to run away from them?
I love that. I love that. I love that way of saying, well, actually, it's natural. Sorry, not what you're saying. In general, it just reminds me of something. When people say, well, actually, anger serves its purpose, right? Because it helped us to survive. It helped us to destroy our enemy, okay? But that argument is a little bit, this particular one, is a little bit tricky because, well, the reason why we like sweet things was because in the day when we lived in the cave, etc., we didn't get a lot of sweet things. They were very nutritious, but we didn't get many. So that's why the moment there was something sweet, our body needed that. Also, we had to preserve energy. So we took the short way because oftentimes we had to walk for days to get our food. So that's why we still take the lift, the elevator, instead of taking the staircase. We have a tendency, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing now. Whatever helped us to possibly preserve energy by not climbing over the tree but walking around it, that tendency we still have now. We take the elevator and we're in peace, etc. Okay? And we're totally obsessing about sweets. So we have that craving naturally because in the days, at that time, it was good for us. With the anger, we feel anger is good because it gives us more energy.
Motivation.
But look at the Dalai Lama. His love gives him so much energy that the people working for him work in shifts. Literally. Bodyguards take shifts because they can't catch up with His Holiness. His Holiness is 82 and has a schedule that is as full as a 16-year-old one who collapses. Oh, 84. He's 84 now. All right, my mom was 82, I forget. So, he's 84 now, and he has people working in shifts for him. He has a schedule that's so tightly packed that, literally people work in shifts. He's got so much energy. So if you say anger gives you energy and strength, well, love and compassion give you what? Strength and energy. So, do you want some energy or you want more love?
Anger takes energy, doesn't give.
Pardon?
Anger takes energy, doesn't give energy.
But it feels in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, now I want to come on. Right. It feels in that moment. But yes, in the end, it drains you. So a lot of the arguments, and I'm not saying, well, Nina, I'm not refuting that, I'm just thinking of this usual argument, anger is good because it gives us strength, yes, but. Or it allowed us to, surely at some point, to label, yes, this is my enemy, this could literally kill me, all right. There is, of course, some necessity for using labels, but we get carried away to go beyond those labels and believe them to be intrinsic this and the other, and to be always like that, and we don't see the whole picture any longer. That a friend, I mean, what's the best way to destroy your enemy? Make him your friend. Right? Make him your friend. Okay, alright, let's go back. So for whom? For one to whom emptiness makes sense, everything makes sense. For one whom emptiness does not make sense, nothing makes sense. When you foist on us, when you basically foist on us, I don't even know what that means.
Throw on us.
When you throw on us all of your errors, you're like someone who has mounted his horse and forgotten the horse itself. Whoa, not exactly self-explanatory. What does that mean? You're like someone who has mounted a horse and forgotten the horse. So there are different ways of saying that. Some people say like you've stolen a horse, you're sitting on the horse, you've stolen it, and now you're accusing others of having done so, not realizing that you are the one who stole the horse. So basically accusing someone else of mistakes that you yourself made. Basically saying you're accusing us of holding a philosophy that refutes the existence of cause and effect, etc. When in actuality, your philosophy, that of inherent existence, because of that causes and effects in the Four Noble Truth cannot exist. So I can basically throw what you accuse me of, I throw back at you, because this is exactly your problem, right? Am I making sense? So this is not a way we would talk ordinarily. We would not say, oh, you mounted a horse, you forgot that you did. We don't talk like that. Maybe that was just a saying at the time of Nagarjuna. It was an analogy that was used to say exactly that. What you accuse me of, I actually need to accuse you of. You're having that problem. Okay. If you regard all things, and now he explains why, if you regard all things as existing inherently, then you should regard all things as being without causes and conditions. Because you don't need anything else. It's already a seed, for instance. It doesn't need, it's already a sprout. It's inherent in this object of being a sprout. If it existed inherently, it would be not just inherently an object, it would inherently be a sprout, for instance. And if it's inherently a sprout, it only needs a cause and a condition that gives rise it and makes it a sprout. It already is one. It's inherent in it. It doesn't need anything to be that. Okay. Results and causes. Agents, instruments, and actions. So like, an instrument, if you have a hammer, an action. An agent would be someone hammering. The instrument would be the hammer, and the action would be the nail. Would be the hammering of the nail. The object is not mentioned, but you have either you talk about agent, action, and object, and depending on the action, you may even need a tool, an instrument, such as a hammer. So then you have all four: an agent, a tool, hammer, the action of hammering, and the object that's being hammered. So for any of those to exist, you need the other three. You can't hammer a nail unless you have the other three. So the hammering is only possible if you have a nail, a hammer, and a person doing the hammering. So they're all dependent on each other. If hammering existed inherently, you could hammer something. You could have hammering without a hammer and without someone doing the hammering, and you certainly wouldn't need an object, as an example. Then, results and causes. You wouldn't need those because you don't need a result. A result is something that depends on a cause. If it existed inherently, it wouldn't be a result, because a result means it has a cause and it doesn't depend on that. Arising and ceasing would not take place, because something can only arise in dependence on something else, but according to you, that's not necessary. Ceasing. Ceasing also depends on something else. Okay. As well as the results, they would be undermined. So again, results and causes. Here more the emphasis on causes, and the results in general, nothing would be a result be there, and it wouldn't be a result of something. That which is dependently arisen, okay, those are the two most important verses in this whole text. That which is dependently arisen is explained to be emptiness, or explained to be empty of inherent existence. So here, emptiness. Sometimes emptiness is used to mean it's just empty. That, being dependently imputed, is the middle way. So in other words, that which is dependently arisen lacks inherent existence. That which lacks inherent existence, since it's merely imputed, it abides in the way of the middle, as in like, it's not non-existent, and it doesn't exist inherently. Does that make sense? Oh, imputed, labeled, designated. It's labeled by the mind. And then it goes on, the second verse that's usually cited in combination. There's no phenomenon that is not dependently arisen. Therefore, there's no phenomenon that is not empty. Those two verses again, when Holiness gives the teachings, sooner or later Holiness will mention those two.
Because it's the answer to the first two parts.
Yes, it's also a summary of the entire book. It's a summary. What?
Notice that it says dependently imputed, not merely imputed, but dependently imputed.
Well, just because it is dependently imputed, it doesn't mean it's not merely imputed. Because you already said it's empty, that's already implied. And
it's not only imputed, it's a certain way of imputation that is dependent on other things except the imputation.
Yes, but the word, you see, the word only is implied here, having said earlier on that it doesn't exist inherently. Because it doesn't exist, so you don't have to say again, the word only, if it's used without mentioning lack of inherent existence, just points in that direction, but you've already said it in the previous sentence. It's explained to be emptiness, it's empty, so lacking inherent existence. So, lacking inherent existence, it's dependently imputed. So it's only imputed. It lacks inherent existence and it's dependently imputed. So the only is implied. And dependently imputed, that's almost, it's denedappa. Denedappa, you don't need to say denedappa. Actually, if you just say it's imputed, it's the same. In dependently imputed and imputed are the same thing. But it stresses the fact that you impute something, not just calling it randomly this, that, and the other, but in dependence on the basis of imputation, in dependence on the label, and in dependence on the mind labeling. You need at least those three. Okay? And then, it doesn't exist in and of itself. Why? Because, in dependence on other factors, it is labeled. Does that make sense? That's the middle way. Now, we're saying a little bit about dependence, just a little bit. We talk about dependence on causes and conditions. That's the causal type. We say dependence on parts and dependence on imputation. With the first one being easier understood than the second type, and the third type being the most subtle type. So, subtle means basically harder to understand. First of all, causes and conditions, parts, and imputation. Three types.
Dependent on imputation, is that the same as dependent on consciousness?
No, not necessarily. Because dependent on imputation is dependent on a specific type of consciousness, which is the labeling consciousness, the conceptual consciousness, that thinks it is this. Labeling is not dependent on eye consciousness, for instance, not directly dependent. But something can be dependent, like colors, blue, etc. They're also dependent on a sense consciousness. But that's a coarser level versus saying they were merely called that, merely labeled by a conceptual mind. There's a slight difference here. So, when we have these three types of dependence, this is unique to Buddhism, it says. That those three. But you may argue, are you kidding me? What about the Christian farmer? The Christian farmer doesn't believe in dependence on causes and conditions? Well, yes, but he's not consistent from a Buddhist point of view. Not consistent in the sense that Yeah, the farmer, knowing about seeds and sprouts and fertilizer, understands dependent arising, but also believes God to have a part in the process of this. And from a Buddhist point of view, God is not a cause for a good harvest. God does not cause a good harvest. From a Buddhist point of view, that's just not possible. Okay? You need to have a cause that has the potential to bring something about. So the idea of God, Buddhists don't have a problem with the entity of God, but not an omnipotent God. Kol Yudai, Kol Yachon. Not Kol Yachon, right? Yachol. Oh, Kol Yachol is omnipotent?
Yeah.
Kol Yudai is just omniscient. Omniscient, all right, no problem. Kol
Yodea.
Yudai.
There is omniscient, Yahol is potent.
Yachol. Okay, so Kol Yachol is not Kol Yachol. Right? God cannot be Kol Yachol. So if you believe in the interference of an entity that can bring suffering and happiness, etc., from a Buddhist point of view, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because that would not be a cause for a good harvest. Okay? So you can have a good farmer and lots of causes and conditions that bring this about. So therefore, believing in an entity that also serves as a cause, while it cannot, that would mean from a Buddhist point of view, dependent arising, dependence on causes and conditions is not fully understood. Or some philosophers that believe in a permanent I. There is no permanent I that creates actions, etc. That is saying, well, this permanent I, this ever-present solid I, well, it could not interact with anything. So if things were dependent on seeds and fertilizer and on a permanent I, you're having a problem in there. You're adding too much. Okay? In terms of like adding a permanent I as being a factor or causal condition. Alright, so therefore this is said to be unique just because from a Buddhist point of view, only the causes and conditions that have the potential to give rise to that. And first of all, you need a cause or condition. That needs to be impermanent, cannot be permanent, and it needs to have the potential to create that. Okay, so you need to have three conditions, three attributes that a cause must have. A cause must be impermanent. It must create something. It must have the potential to create something. It must be impermanent, and it must have the potential to create this particular thing, and not have the potential to create something else. Okay. Anyway, so I don't want to go into all this, but that is therefore dependence on causes and conditions is the first level. Can that help us to remove our afflictive emotions? Yes, it can. It can at least reduce them. For instance, when we're angry with someone, think of someone you really hate someone, a serial killer. Have you ever found yourself like to hear about this evil person, a serial killer, I hate them, I don't like them, right? It's like, oh, this person is evil. Okay? You feel in your heart like this dislike. And then someone tells you their story as a child, how they became a serial killer. What happens to your hatred? Oh, it kind of melts away. There's an understanding. Okay? Because we understand that this person is not inherently an evil person, but there are causes and conditions that gave rise, that made that person who they are. And suddenly, there's more of an understanding. It's less that they're inherently this, but they're the result of these causes and conditions. That doesn't mean they don't need to be punished and restrained, etc. I'm not saying that, but the hatred has a lot less to hold on to, because hatred can only really thrive if that hatred perceives that person as being inherently bad. The moment you understand that no, there are circumstances that give rise to that, your hatred loses its basis. And then the next dependence is dependence on parts. Right? So a person is just what we call a summary of different parts. So again, with hatred, what am I hating? The knee, the belly, the face, the hair, the ears, the mind. Which mind? The mind this morning, the mind the afternoon. So if I think about it's an assembly of parts based on which I call it that, then again, it's very difficult. Like, what am I hating? When we hate someone, we don't hate their actions. We don't hate their body or mind. In our mind, we create something solid, singular, right? Have you ever noticed when you hate someone, you don't hate their body? Only by association, maybe. Oh, I can't look at them and make me sick. But that is not really what we really dislike, is the person, him or herself. So we create the singular entity. Our anger creates a singular and like a single entity, one blob that we hate. And it's none of the parts. But that doesn't exist. The person is really just that. It's those different parts. That's what we call a person. And of course, in the end, we just label them. That's the third type of label. That's the first type. It's just labeled. It's just labeled. Good or bad. Right? Good or bad is labeled on the basis of a particular action. We say the person is bad. But that doesn't mean all their actions are bad. A particular action. And then again, I believe, just bad. Because all I'm using, the only label I'm using is bad. So there's a lot more to that. I've seen it, but let me just... Okay. And so, only one part of it. Moreover, once we've applied that label, we believe them to be unchangeably bad. And we forget bad, it's only in relation to what I want and what I don't want. Right? It's in relation to that. If I want them to do something, if I don't know, if I had a wish to die and I want someone to kill me, I'd appreciate if they killed me. Right? I'd be saying, you're good, you're doing me a favor. It's a bizarre world, and of course we don't live in such a world. All I'm trying to say is, if he would act in a way that was the opposite right now, well, what is good or bad would change. So in and of itself, we cannot really say something is good or bad. It's always in relation to many other things. Right? That doesn't mean that conventionally we shouldn't punish this person or we shouldn't discipline them, etc. This is not denying that. I'm just saying our exaggerated sense of this person is only bad, is always bad, and it's got nothing to do with me calling him that, or it's not dependent on other factors, it just is. That's the problem. Okay? And anger can only thrive and exist if it does not consider any of those types of dependence. So to your angry mind, dependence on causes and conditions is ignored, dependence on parts is ignored, and dependence on imputation is definitely ignored. If that is not true to your mind, it can be angry. If any of those factors is taken into consideration, you can work as hard as you want, you can't be angry. You can't. That's like fire without fuel. Fire is like the anger, and you have no fuel. It doesn't burn on anything. So our afflictive emotions can only function on these wrong views. I can only function on that, which is why it makes so much sense. You want to get rid of those emotions? Take away the fuel, which is the right understanding. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, this is true, I think. Yeah, it's true. And if someone, he didn't have any real sense of God, but if someone rapes your daughter.
They what? Raped your daughter?
Rapes your daughter. And you know that he was grown up as a poor and his father raped him. So I believe every parent is angry. Even though he thinks, oh, he can be good to this rapist, he can be good to his friend. Or he's not all bad, but he did such a bad thing that
Okay, I get what you're saying. Okay, there be anger. Surely, and I'm not saying you have no right to be angry.
It's not useful. The anger is not useful.
That's the whole point.
It's not useful.
That's the whole
There
point.
are, we see it in a
Yes.
religious
All right.
family
Yes.
that they forgive especially religious family, someone who killed his son